My friends all came in the most expensive outfits. I showed up in the simplest dress. At first, they laughed at me. But the next day, when they saw what happened, their faces completely changed. This story is entirely fictional and has no connection to real events. The reunion of Colegio San Martin, a prestigious high school in Madrid, was something many former students had been waiting for. Invitations had been sent months earlier, and social media was buzzing with pictures of people buying new clothes, posting about hair appointments, and talking about how they couldn't wait to shine. For Isabella Martinez, things were different. She lived a humble life in a small neighborhood of Madrid, helping her widowed mother with a modest family bakery. Money had never been plenty, but blessings were everywhere in their home. Isabella wore her hijab with quiet dignity, and although she faced whispers and sideways glances sometimes, she carried herself with calm confidence. When the invitation arrived, Isabella hesitated. "Should I really go, Mama? Everyone will come dressed like they're attending a gala." "What do I have?" she asked softly. Her mother, Doña Camila, smiled and opened a wooden chest that had belonged to her own mother. From it, she pulled out a carefully folded, simple yet elegant cream-colored dress. It was modest, with long sleeves and a flowing skirt, the kind of dress that carried more meaning than price. "This was mine when I was your age, Hija. It's not new, but it carries history. Wear it with dignity, and you will shine brighter than all the jewels in the world." Isabella hesitated, but she trusted her mother's wisdom. She decided she would wear that old dress. The night of the reunion arrived. The Grand Hotel ballroom was filled with chandeliers, a live orchestra, and tables covered in silver platters of food. Former classmates walked in, one after another, dressed in the latest designer labels. Shimmering gowns, expensive suits, sparkling jewelry. Everything screamed luxury. When Isabella walked in, silence briefly fell across the hall. She wore her mother's simple dress, her hijab neatly pinned, her eyes lowered with modesty. Some stared, some whispered, and then the laughter began. Lucia Fernandez, one of the most popular girls back in school, smirked. "Dios mío, look at her dress. Did she just come from a vintage shop? Or is she playing Cinderella?" Several others giggled, their voices dripping with sarcasm. "Of course, Isabella. Always the strange one. Couldn't even afford something decent for tonight." Isabella's cheeks burned, but she refused to bow her head. She greeted people politely, smiling when others tried to provoke her. Yet deep down, her heart ached. She wanted to disappear. At one point, she slipped outside the ballroom to the garden, where she sat on a stone bench, gazing at the night sky. "Ya Allah," she whispered softly in Spanish-accented Arabic. "Grant me patience. Do not let my heart be hardened by their mockery. Let me find strength in you." A quiet peace washed over her. She returned to the hall, choosing not to let their cruelty define her night. She helped an elderly teacher carry her bag. She smiled at the hotel staff, and she congratulated classmates sincerely, even when they were cold toward her. But what no one expected was what would happen the very next day. Early in the morning, news spread like wildfire across Madrid's social networks. Isabella Martinez, owner of the San Martin Bakery, honored for feeding hundreds of needy families during winter. A major local newspaper had run a full-page story about her and her mother. They had been quietly donating bread and meals to struggling families for years. The journalist described Isabella not only as kind-hearted, but also as an example of faith and humility in a world obsessed with appearances. Pictures of Isabella in her bakery apron, serving bread with a smile, filled people's screens. The article went viral. Radio hosts talked about her. Even a local TV station requested an interview. By midday, Many of her former classmates who had laughed at her the night before were stunned. They stared at their phones, seeing Isabella's face everywhere. Her mother's old dress had become a symbol of dignity rather than shame. At the hotel cafe near the ballroom, Lucia sat with two other classmates, scrolling furiously. Can you believe this? She was in the same hall last night, wearing that plain old thing, and now she's the talk of the city? Her friend shook her head. And we laughed at her. Now look who she really is. Isabella, however, didn't boast or mock anyone back. She simply thanked Allah for the honor and continued her work at the bakery. When asked by a reporter how she felt about suddenly becoming famous, she replied, "True worth is not in clothes or wealth. It is in what you do for others and in keeping your heart pure. Everything else fades." But this was only the beginning of what was to come. For as Isabella's name spread, her path would cross again with people from her past, some in ways she never could have imagined. The bakery was busier than ever. Customers lined up outside, some out of curiosity, others sincerely touched by Isabella's story. The once quiet shop now buzzed with voices, laughter, and the sweet smell of fresh bread. But not everyone was happy. Among those who watched from a distance was Alejandro Ruiz, a former classmate who had also attended the reunion. Back in school, he had been arrogant, the son of a wealthy businessman. At the reunion, he had worn a tailored Italian suit, boasting about his father's company. He had joined in the laughter at Isabella's expense, never imagining her life had such depth. Now, seeing her face in the newspaper, Alejandro felt something gnawing inside him. It wasn't just guilt. It was also admiration. The Isabella he had once mocked seemed to shine brighter than any of them. One afternoon, he walked into the bakery. Isabella was behind the counter, tying a bag of warm bread. She looked up and met his eyes. "Alejandro," she greeted softly. "Peace be upon you." He cleared his throat, suddenly unsure of himself. Hola, Isabella. I came to buy bread." She smiled politely, wrapping his purchase. He noticed how calm she looked, how her eyes held no resentment. Unable to hold it in, he blurted, "Listen, about last night, the way I laughed at you. It was wrong. I was wrong." Isabella paused for a moment, then handed him the bag. "We all make mistakes, Alejandro. What matters is that we learn from them. You don't owe me words. You owe yourself honesty." Her answer struck him. He nodded awkwardly and left, but her words stayed in his mind long after. Meanwhile, Lucia, the glamorous classmate who had mocked Isabella the loudest, found herself in a dilemma. She had built her entire image on appearances: expensive clothes, extravagant trips, a carefully curated online life. But the sudden admiration Isabella received unsettled her. At home, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her glittering dress from the reunion hung behind her, lifeless. She scrolled through her phone, seeing comments like, "True beauty lies in humility. Look at Isabella, such dignity. She's an inspiration." Lucia threw her phone onto the bed in frustration. "Why her? Why not me?" she whispered. Yet deep down, she felt something she hadn't in years: emptiness. The following week, Isabella was invited to speak at a community center about charity and the importance of helping others. She was nervous, but her mother encouraged her. "Speak from the heart, Hija. People need sincerity, not perfection." The hall filled with families, students, and even some of her old classmates. Lucia sat in the back row, arms crossed, while Alejandro lingered near the door. Isabella took the stage, wearing the same modest cream dress. She spoke not about herself, but about the blessings of giving, the peace of prayer, and the dignity of living simply. When I wore this dress, she said, touching the sleeve, many thought it meant I had nothing. But in truth, it reminded me that I have everything that matters: faith, family, and a chance to serve others. The room fell silent. Even Lucia, who had come ready to mock, felt a lump in her throat. Alejandro lowered his head, ashamed of how shallow he had been. That night, something shifted. Lucia approached Isabella after the event. Her voice trembled as she said, "I don't know why, but when you spoke, it made me realize how empty my life feels. I have everything money can buy, but nothing real. How do you find peace?" Isabella looked at her with gentle eyes. Peace comes when you stop chasing what others think of you and start seeking what's true. For me, that truth is with Allah. But even if you don't understand that yet, start with gratitude and sincerity. The heart cannot be filled with lies. Lucia's eyes watered. She quickly turned away, embarrassed. But destiny was not finished weaving its threads. A month later, tragedy struck. A massive fire broke out in a poor district of Madrid, destroying homes and leaving families homeless. Isabella and her mother immediately began organizing food drives from the bakery, gathering donations and distributing bread. This time, her old classmates, Alejandro, Lucia, and even others who had mocked her, found themselves joining her cause. At first out of guilt, then out of genuine compassion. For the first time, they saw Isabella not as the quiet, strange girl in a plain dress, but as a leader who inspired them all. But in the midst of this new chapter, an unexpected challenge would soon test Isabella's patience, her faith, and her ability to forgive. The fire in Madrid had shaken the city. Isabella and her mother barely slept as they worked day and night to feed the victims. The bakery, once a simple shop, had turned into a hub of relief efforts. Neighbors, students, and even strangers came to help. Among them were Alejandro and Lucia. For the first time, they stood side by side with Isabella, not mocking, not competing, but carrying boxes of bread, cooking meals, and serving families who had lost everything. But as days turned into weeks, Isabella noticed something unsettling. Someone had been spreading rumors. A few volunteers whispered behind her back, questioning her intentions. "She's just doing this for attention. Why does every article only mention Isabella? What about the rest of us?" One evening, Alejandro stormed into the bakery, holding his phone. His face was red with anger. "Isabella, have you seen this?" She took the phone. On the screen was a blog post claiming that Isabella was using charity donations for her personal gain. It accused her of seeking fame under the disguise of generosity. The article was cruel, filled with lies. Isabella's hands trembled as she read. "Who would write this?" she whispered. Alejandro clenched his jaw. "I don't know, but whoever it is, they want to destroy your name." Days grew heavier. Some volunteers stopped coming. A few donors pulled back. Strangers left hateful comments online. Isabella's heart ached, not for herself, but for the families who depended on the food drives. That night, she sat on her prayer mat after closing the bakery. Her tears fell as she raised her hands. "Ya Allah, you know my heart. You know my intentions. Protect me from lies and guide those who seek to harm me." Her mother came and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Hija, remember, the truth always rises, just as light breaks the darkest night. Be patient." Meanwhile, Lucia wrestled with guilt. She had overheard a phone call at a cafe earlier that week. It was Diego, another former classmate, known for his jealousy. At the reunion, Diego had mocked Isabella as loudly as Lucia had. But now, seeing her success, he was consumed by envy. He had connections in the media, and it was he who had planted the lies. Lucia felt torn. Should she tell Isabella, or would that make things worse? For nights she couldn't sleep, the weight of her past arrogance crushing her. Finally, she walked into the bakery one morning. Isabella was serving bread to children, her smile unwavering despite the storm around her. Lucia's voice shook. Isabella, I know who's behind this. The room fell quiet. Isabella turned, her calm eyes meeting Lucia's nervous gaze. Who? Diego. He's the one who spread the lies. He told someone at the cafe he wanted to expose you. I should have told you earlier. I'm sorry. Isabella inhaled slowly. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering a quiet prayer. Then she looked at Lucia and said, Thank you for telling me, but do not be angry with him. His heart is blind with envy. I will not let hatred grow in mine. Lucia stared at her, stunned. You're not angry, after everything he's done to ruin you. Isabella shook her head. I will defend myself with truth, but anger only feeds the darkness. Later that week, Isabella was invited to a live TV interview to address the accusations. Many advised her to fight fire with fire, to attack Diego publicly. But when the cameras turned on, Isabella spoke with gentle firmness. I have nothing to hide. Every donation is accounted for. Every loaf of bread has gone to a family in need. I am not perfect, but I strive to serve sincerely. Those who spread lies may succeed for a moment, but the truth is timeless. The host leaned forward. And what do you say to those who mock you, who accuse you? Isabella smiled softly. I say, may Allah guide them. Because in the end, it is not me they are fighting. It is their own hearts. The interview went viral. People were moved not just by her words, but by the serenity in her voice. Donations poured back in, even more than before. Volunteers returned, and the truth about Diego's scheme quietly surfaced when one of his own colleagues leaked his emails. His reputation collapsed overnight. But instead of celebrating, Isabella sent a message to him through a mutual friend. If you ever wish to start again, to do good instead of harm, my bakery will always have work for your hands. When Alejandro heard this, he was astonished. You offered him a place to work after all the damage he caused you? Isabella simply replied, Mercy is greater than revenge. Didn't we all once laugh at someone who wore a simple dress? And yet, Allah gave us another chance. Alejandro fell silent, humbled. Lucia wept quietly, realizing just how far Isabella's heart was from her own vanity. But fate was not finished. The fire victims still struggled, and Isabella's bakery could not sustain everyone forever. A larger decision loomed, a decision that would change not only Isabella's life, but also the future of her classmates, Madrid's poor, and even her own heart. Winter deepened in Madrid. The fire victims, though sheltered in temporary housing, were still in great need. The bakery could not possibly sustain the hundreds of families alone. Isabella prayed constantly for a way forward. One evening, while preparing bread, Alejandro entered the bakery with determination in his eyes. Isabella, he began, I've been thinking. My father's company owns warehouses across the city. One of them has been empty for years. We could transform it into a community center, a place for food storage, education, shelter. But I don't know how to run something like that. You do. Isabella looked at him, surprised. A community center? Yes. Alejandro nodded. You've inspired people. I have resources. If we combine them, we can create something bigger than a bakery. Something that lasts. Her heart warmed at his words, but also carried caution. Good intentions must be rooted in sincerity, Alejandro. This cannot be about pride or image. He lowered his head. I know. I mocked you once. I lived for appearances. But watching you has changed me. I want to do this for the right reasons. Isabella studied his face, and, after a long pause, she smiled. Then let us begin. Word spread quickly. Volunteers flocked to help convert the warehouse. Painters, carpenters, university students all came together. Even Lucia showed up daily, sleeves rolled up, carrying bricks and scrubbing floors. At first, people laughed at her. The princess doing manual work? But she didn't care. She remembered Isabella's words. The heart cannot be filled with lies. And for the first time, she felt her heart slowly shedding its vanity. As weeks passed, the warehouse transformed into La Casa de Esperanza, the House of Hope. There were storage rooms filled with donated food, classrooms for children, prayer spaces for those who wished, and warm blankets for families who had lost their homes. The opening ceremony was modest. No glitter, no red carpet, just heartfelt speeches, Quran recitation in Spanish translation, and prayers from grateful families. Tears filled many eyes as Isabella stood before them in her mother's old cream dress once again. This center, she said, is not built by one person. It is the work of many hearts united for good. May Allah bless every hand that lifted a brick, every voice that prayed, every heart that gave. But with success came another test. Diego, whose lies had once threatened Isabella, returned. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He stood at the entrance of the center, hesitant. Many volunteers recognized him and immediately bristled. What is he doing here? He tried to destroy her. Alejandro stepped forward, protective. You don't belong here, Diego. But Isabella raised her hand gently. Wait, let him speak. Diego's voice cracked. I lost everything. The lies I spread turned against me. No company will hire me. My friends abandoned me. I came because I remembered what you said, that your bakery would have a place for my hands. Gasps filled the room. Volunteers murmured in disbelief. Alejandro clenched his fists, ready to drag him out. But Isabella's eyes softened. You came seeking forgiveness, Diego? She asked. He nodded, tears spilling. I don't deserve it, but I can't live like this anymore. Please, give me a chance. Silence filled the hall. Then Isabella spoke. Diego, forgiveness is not mine. It is Allah's. But as for me, yes, you may work here. Start by sweeping the floors. Let your hands learn honesty. The volunteers were stunned. Alejandro whispered fiercely, Isabella, he doesn't deserve it. After all he did. But she looked at him calmly. Mercy is not deserved, Alejandro. That's why it is mercy. From that day, Diego worked silently. At first, people avoided him. Some mocked him under their breath. But he didn't complain. He swept floors, carried boxes, cleaned dishes. Day after day, his pride melted. Slowly, people began to notice the change. Lucia one afternoon offered him water. He looked at her in shock. Why are you kind to me? I was cruel to you too. Lucia sighed. Because Isabella taught me that no one is beyond a second chance. I hated her once. Now I want to be like her. Diego lowered his head. For the first time, hope flickered in his eyes. As spring arrived, La Casa de Esperanza became a symbol of unity in Madrid. Newspapers wrote about it. Families found shelter. Children learned to read. Neighbors, once divided by wealth and class, worked side by side. But one evening, as Isabella closed the center, Alejandro lingered by the door. "Isabella," he said quietly, "you've changed my life. I don't look at wealth the same way anymore. I don't look at people the same way either." She smiled politely. "Alhamdulillah, change comes from Allah." He hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you think, one day, someone like me could ever deserve someone like you?" Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected this. The silence stretched. She lowered her gaze. "Alejandro, what you seek must be based not on admiration of me, but on commitment to truth and to Allah. Pray about it. Purify your heart first. Then, perhaps, Allah will guide you." He nodded, humbled. "I understand." The journey was not over, for as Isabella's influence grew, so did the challenges. A powerful test loomed ahead, one that would force her and all around her to choose between comfort and sacrifice, between fear and faith. Months passed. La Casa de Esperanza became a lifeline for countless families. What began with an old dress and a moment of humiliation had turned into a movement of mercy. One evening, as the sun set over Madrid, Isabella stood at the entrance of the center. Children laughed in the courtyard, families shared meals, and volunteers, Alejandro, Lucia, even Diego, worked together in harmony. Her mother came beside her, eyes filled with pride. "Do you see, Hija? You wore my simple dress, and they mocked you. Yet Allah made it the seed of something greater than all their glittering gowns." Isabella smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, Mama. True honor is not in what we wear, but in how we live." And with that, she stepped inside, ready to serve again, knowing the story was not about her, but about the light of faith that turns mockery into mercy and humiliation into hope.